alphabetically, and one is starts with a J, and the other starts with a P. So we'll start out with Kayla Jackson Williams, and then Angela can start her 5-minute thing. Then they will alternate answering questions. Who's first? And then when you wind up, Angela will be the first to say whatever she wants to say, and Kayla will be the last. Okay with you all? Got my timer here. Gotta put it on. All right, so Ms. Jackson Williams, you're on.
Well, thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure that I've had an opportunity to meet most, if not all of you, in various platforms or forums. And so good to see you all again for those who I have met, and nice to meet you for those who I have not. My name is Kayla Jackson Williams, and as Leslie has stated and Pam said earlier, I am a candidate for Associate Circuit Judge Division 10 here in Boone County. And of course, it's always important for you all to know a little bit of background about the candidates. And so I'll start off by saying, unfortunately, I am a transplant to Columbia. Although I am a transplant, I have been here for almost 10 years now, and this is the only home that my 5-year-old knows, and it is the only home that I intend for her to know for quite some time. I love Columbia, and it has been extremely good to us. I grew up in St. Louis, and I was raised by a single mom with a brother of mine. Growing up, it was a little difficult because my mom was a single parent, and she was a social worker. And as a social worker, she worked with the behavioral kids unit. And so anyone who knows the social work life knows that calls can come in from those units at any time of day. And it's no telling what that type of call would be. So that often did take her away from us in random ways. In addition to that, my brother had sickle cell beta thalassemia. So it's both forms of sickle cell combined into one. And he spent a lot of time in hospitals, and I often spent a lot of time alone. So very early on, I learned to be pretty independent, but I would be remiss if I did not say that programs in my community really helped me get to where I am. I was a Boys and Girls Club kid my entire life, as well as an Upward Bound Math and Science kid. And Upward Bound Math and Science, as well as Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club in St. Louis, were the reasons that I was able to attend college. And so I say they were the reasons because I had a number of scholarships through both of those organizations, and they assisted with my application fees as well as me writing my letters for admission. I ultimately got a full ride to Truman State, where I studied criminal justice and I minored in English. And I also took advantage of their study abroad programs, where I studied abroad in both Greece and Italy. After graduating from Truman State, I attended Mizzou for law school, and I graduated from Mizzou with honors, where I was also a member of the Order of Barristers. So despite everything that I went through growing up, from not having food on the table to not having electricity sometimes, here I am today with a strong and tenacious 5-year-old who will go on to do even more great things than I do. As far as my career is concerned, I started off my career doing family law, and I practiced in both Boone and Callaway County. I practiced primarily, I feel, in front of Commissioner Miller and Judge Schneider, but of course, it just varied. After practicing family law, I left to become a public defender, where I spent a number of years. It was, I will say, truly the most gratifying thing that I have done. While I was a public defender, I primarily requested either juvenile cases, and if they were not a juvenile, I wanted cases that the offender was between the ages of 17 and 20. Up until last year, you were considered an adult at 17 in Missouri. And so a lot of times I would have individuals who turned 17 maybe a month before they were charged with an offense. Or I had a particular case where he was arrested on his 17th birthday, and so he was charged as an adult. And so I really took a liking, and I know that's a real weird word to use in this sense, to the youth, only because if I had not had those programs that I had as a youth, I know that I could have easily been in their shoes. And so, sorry, I do have to add one more thing. So although my mom had 2 children, my dad, Papa was a Rolling Stone. So there was 7 of us total. And so my little brother was murdered in 2018, which also made me, at 19 years old, which also made me take a liking to the youth cases that I was often in front of. I appeared a lot in front of all of the judges, and I see my 10 seconds. I'm also an adjunct professor. I'm currently in civil law. I will wrap up anything at the end that you all were not able to learn about me, and I see my stop, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here what time it is. Okay, now we have Ms. Peterson. It's your turn to go on. You got it.
Thank you. My name is Angela Peterson. I'm a candidate for Boone County Associate Circuit Judge, Division 10. I too am originally from St. Louis, Missouri, but I grew up in a home where I recognize, I think, the privilege of that. I had a mom and dad both in the home, and I was raised in what back then would have been called kind of a traditional nuclear family, mom, dad, and me and my 2 sisters. For us, my parents are originally from the South. My mother is from Holly Springs, Mississippi, and my father is from Memphis, Tennessee. My maternal grandfather started out as a sharecropper in rural Mississippi. And so for us, there was, I think, never a doubt that we were going to go on and go to college, and me and both of my sisters did. It was always emphasized in my household, and we followed the rules. So in 1991, I came to Columbia in order to start at the University of Missouri, Columbia. I graduated from Mizzou 3 times. So from 1991 until December of 94, I worked on a Bachelor of Science in Accountancy. And I did that in 3.5 years. And from December of 94 until August of 96, I worked on a master's degree in accountancy. And then from 96 to 99, I worked on my law degree, and I did complete that also here at the University of Missouri. I also took the bar exam that same year in 1999, and I passed it. And the reason I mention that is this. At the time that I graduated from law school, I had 3 children. They were 3, 2, and 1 was a nursing infant, okay? And so I did not spend a lot of time at the law school. I was not particularly engaged. I wanted to get it done, and I did. But the reason I mention that is because even though I grew up in a home that was very regimented and rules and privilege, a lot of the difficulties that I have faced have been because of the decisions that I have made and the things that I have done that have made things maybe more difficult than they would be. And what's interesting to me is that I wouldn't go back and change any of them. They have made me who I am. They have helped me, I think, be a parent to my children, and they have absolutely helped me in my career. So my first job out of law school was at Mid-Missouri Legal Services. I began working there in 2000, and I worked there all the way up until February of 2022. I had to stop working at Mid-Missouri Legal Services in order to pursue this. You cannot run for office and work at that federally funded program. So that's the only reason I left. At the time that I left, I was litigation director there, which is second in command of that organization. And I was that from 2010 until 2022. I now work at Columbia Family Law Group. I continue to represent people in court every day or on a regular basis. I'm not in court every day. But this week alone, on Monday, I was in Division 9. On Tuesday, I was in Division 8 and in Division 10. And this morning, I was in Division 11. So I'm in court regularly. I have appeared in courts throughout mid-Missouri, as well as the Western District Court of Appeals in Kansas City. I've been in front of over 30 judges in my career. And I know that experience matters. I think that the best way to know what judges do is to go to court and see what's happening in the courtroom. It's to be next to clients and next to litigants as they are experiencing what they're experiencing. And so those are the things that I believe make me qualified uniquely to be the next Division 10 judge.
Okay, thank you. Just made it under. Okay, open for questions, and I guess one of the people here is from the press. I don't know. Press is free to ask as many questions as they want, but I will recognize people. You can hold up your hand or put the little icon on, and I'll call on you. So, all right. Well, I see 4 hands up so far. So I'll start from left to right on my screen. Carl Amari Scala.
Hi, I'm the one with the question. I know that there are different judges within our court system that handle different types of cases. And so I'm real interested in what the duties of this particular judge position would be. You could each give your version of that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. Well, right now, Division 10 is exclusively family law. That's the only work that Division 10 does right now. And that's basically been the case since the current retiring judge, the Honorable Leslie Schneider, since she took the bench. When she came to the bench, she was elected, I think, in 2006. She started in January of 2007. She had decades of really relevant family law experience. And so when she came on shortly thereafter, they shifted and they gave that docket then a whole lot of the family law cases. So that can change. I think it's dependent on what all the judges want to do. My hope certainly would be that Division 10 would continue to be at least primarily family law. And the reason for that is really a few things. One, when you look at the makeup of the other judges on the bench, a lot of them come from the public defender's office or the prosecuting attorney's office. So there is a wealth of criminal law experience on the bench. What there is not is a lot of family law experience. So Division 10 and Division 8, who is the family court commissioner, those are the ones now that do the bulk of the family law cases. So my hope would be that Division 10 would continue to be exclusively family law or primarily family law.
Okay, thank you. And now Ms. Jackson.
So Ms. Peterson is correct that currently Division 10 does take on 98% of family law. But before I decided to run for this position, I sat down with every judge in Boone County. And one of the things I wanted to know was, what is it to be a judge in Boone County? And what would it look like in 2023 if I were to win? And one of the things that I did learn is that Division 10 has been primarily family law. However, because by statute, the circuit courts are really supposed to be the courts that are taking on the family law cases, the dockets will shift slightly. When Judge Oxenhandler was the presiding judge, he did give Judge Schneider a lot of the family law cases. And then as new judges came in, it continued to shift to Judge Schneider. However, in talking with a number of the judges, I do know that some of the judges do want to start taking on more of the family law cases. I also know that although Judge Schneider is not typically the criminal law judges, when they are on call and again, this is all from talking with the judges, Judge Schneider still has to be on call. She has to set bonds. She has to review warrants. She has to know the criminal justice system intricately enough, and even the Boone County system as far as the bond scheduling and the bond fees for particular crimes in order to effectively do the job. And so in January, the courts will shift a little bit. And one of the great things is I do have experience in family, criminal, and civil litigation. I've appeared in front of every single judge in our circuit, and I know that I would be able to step in and handle any of those dockets or be the on-call judge.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Now the next one up is either Herb or Sue Tillema.
Here's a quick to answer question I never dreamed I would be asking of judicial candidates, but now is the time to do it. I believe you're both graduates of MU Law School. How many courses in U.S. constitutional law have you completed? Where, with whom, and how did you do in the courses?
Okay,
Oh, sorry, Ms. Clay.
your last time, who spoke first?
Ms. Peterson spoke first, which is why I started talking. I'm sorry. I remembered your rules from the beginning.
Okay, you can start.
So yes, we both graduated from the University of Missouri. I took Professor Doug Abrams, and oh my gosh, I will not even try to pretend. I do not remember how I scored. I know I was not at the bottom nor at the very top. I was probably somewhere in the middle there. I don't remember. I really don't remember. That was the only constitutional law class I did take. Of course, con law is one of the subjects that is on the Missouri bar. It could either be an essay subject, but it is, of course, always a multiple choice subject. And I am happy to say that that was one of my best scoring subjects when I took the bar. And I will also add in, because something that I forgot about and I should not have, one of the things that I do mirror with Ms. Peterson is while I did not have children in law school, when I took the bar, my daughter was 2 months old and I passed the first time and I scored high enough to go to any state in the country. So I think I did pretty well in con law if they're letting me talk to people about it anyway.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Peterson.
Well, I graduated much less recently than Ms. Jackson Williams. I just do not remember a whole lot about law school. I remember that constitutional law was required. So I know I took at least one class. If memory serves, I believe that my professor was Carl Esbeck, and I believe he is long since retired. And I just could not tell you how I did in that class. I do not know. I passed it. Oh man, I just do not know. I don't even remember if that was a 1L class or a 2L class. It was 20 some odd years ago, close to 25 years ago. So.
Even though it wasn't 25 years ago, Angela, I 100% understand how you feel. And I too had Carl Esbeck, but for Civ Pro. So I know how you're feeling when you talk about him.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. I must say, well, of course, I took con law about 50 years ago, but I don't remember how I did either. All right, the next hand up, Pam.
Yes, I'd like to know if there's any changes in the court that you would like to make if you become the judge.
Okay, Ms. Peterson.
Well, I think that's a good question. I will tell you from what I know about being litigation director at Mid-Missouri Legal Services is it is really hard to know somebody else's job or to do things from the outside. So I'm going to respond by saying, I don't know enough about what's going on inside to be able to really answer that question. As a lawyer, I can tell you, I like what the courts are doing with regard to treatment courts, the Veterans Court, the Mental Health Court, I believe Judge Shaw now has a child support court, drug court, of course. And I was around when I think she was Judge Carpenter at the time, began implementing the drug court program. So I believe that the treatment courts are a really good way to go. I think that collaborative law and making things less adversary when we can do that is a good thing. I also recognize that there are problems with some of the juvenile justice system and the school to prison pipeline. I serve on the Missouri Supreme Court Committee on Access to Family Courts. And the goal of that is to make sure that people who cannot afford an attorney or who choose not to have an attorney are able to go to court, making sure that the forms are there and making sure that they're accessible and that they can get the information that they need if they choose to represent themselves. So the short answer to your question is, I don't know from the outside.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Jackson Williams?
So I don't know that this would be a change, but an addition. And one of the things that I would really like to see the Boone County Court have is something similar that the Callaway County Court has, and that is a family law court. And so like Ms. Peterson talked about treatment courts such as drug court, they have a DWI court, there's the mental health court, there's now the child support court. In Callaway County, they have a family law court, which is similar to the drug courts and the mental health courts, except in order to be in those programs, you have to have a criminal charge against you. But the family law courts in Callaway County, they are assisting mothers and fathers who have substance abuse issues or who have issues that are affecting their families in some type of way. They have programming for them in the family court that would assist them with drug addiction, alcohol addiction, mental health issues, without them having to have the criminal law component behind it. When I met with Commissioner Carpenter about this, she did inform me that it was grant funded, and so that the program is implemented by grant, and that she worked with an individual who is actually someone who endorses me, and that is from Powerhouse Community Development, to get the grant written and to get the program implemented. And so that is something that I would absolutely love to see in Boone County, especially coming from the Public Defender's Office and having worked with the mental health and drug courts. One of the other things is I am on the Supreme Court's Commission for Racial and Ethnic Fairness, but in particular, the Juvenile Justice Division. And one of the things that our subsection right now is focusing on is the intake form that our juveniles have to go through whenever they are decided whether to be detained or whether to be released to their families. And there are some severe biases there that we are trying to get corrected in order for our children to be all treated equally. And once that is done, it will be amazing. And I would love to see it implemented in Boone County.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hate it when the timer goes off because I hate that noise. All right. David Robinson, do you have a question?
Yes, I first want to say that we have a great privilege here, but a difficult one, to choose between two really distinguished and impressive attorneys on this run for this judgeship. So I guess I want to ask a very simple question. Why do you want to change your career at this point and go to the bench?
All right, Ms. Jackson Williams is the first this time.
So for me, there's a number of reasons. First, I think that we have seen a lot of the same things in our court systems as far as what the bench looks like. And while I love all of our judges, I do believe that we need someone on the bench who could be a bridge between generations, between cultures, between a number of things. Like we absolutely need a bridge. And at this point in my career, I am definitely focused on, one, elevating myself, because if we were to not say that, it would be a complete fallacy, right? We all want to be better and to do better. But also, I believe that I would be able to bring a unique perspective, a fresh perspective. And I think based on my conversations with the judges from my time in jury trials, my time in bench trials, I would be able to see things in a way that other individuals may not be able to see them and be able to bring something new to the courts. I also think with me having a small child, this would allow me the opportunity to invest more time into the courts, be there for a longer period of time, because judges do have to retire at 70 years old. And while some may think that it's a pitfall of mine to be younger, I think that it's a great advantage because I would be able to be there longer, learn from the judges who are there, and be able to take their wealth of knowledge and give it to those who come after me, because God willing, I will have been there for quite some time and be able to pass knowledge down. I also think that at this point in my career, I want to continue to give back to our community. One of the things that I have stood on since the beginning of my campaign is that people do not care what you know until they know you care. And I think that anyone who has met me and who knows me knows that I care a great deal about any individual I talk to or any individual who was a client. And I will continue to pour that into the individuals who come before the bench, because I do believe that oftentimes they feel like people can't identify with them. And I really believe because of my walk of life, I can.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Peterson.
Well, I think that I have considered becoming a judge for years. The question is, at what point is my family life ready? At what point am I ready? And do I know that I've got something that will actually benefit the community? And this is the time, right? So I am not somebody who originally even wanted to ever be in court. I only ended up as a lawyer when, as part of my master's of accountancy, I had to take tax classes over at the law school. And one of my law professors, when I was still a business school student, said, have you ever thought about becoming a tax attorney instead of a tax accountant? So even when I went to law school, I was still not intending to ever be in court. But when my path went the way that it went, and I ended up at Mid-Missouri Legal Services representing people and in court on a regular basis, you're there, you're sitting on dockets, you're listening just like the judge is listening. You're talking to your neighbor thinking, what would I do in this situation? And so it's just kind of a natural thing for me based on where my experience has been. I think it's just born of the work that I've been doing. When you're next to people, when you have to be the one that relays to them what the judge has done, you understand very clearly the impact that this has on real people every day. And I have been serving the community, and I've developed the skills that I need to be a judge. And so I'm excited to do it.
Okay, thank you. I see that this time Carl and Murray have another hand up.
Yeah, this is Carl this time. Occasionally my wife takes over, but I agree with David Robinson that there are two eminently qualified folks vying for this seat. You've had disparate backgrounds, but you've shared the same hometown, and often where you sit is where you stand. So that's one question. How does your background influence your ability to make these kinds of judgments? And the other has to do, I'm always interested in intergovernmental relations as an elected official with the county and the city and the state and so on and so forth. I'm always interested in rural versus urban issues and so on, and whether or not there are any differences in your approach. I understand the restrictions of law and so on, but any differences of opinion as to how you face those kinds of issues?
Okay, there's a brain full of stuff to answer. Ms. Peterson?
Well, I think I forgot the first question, so I will answer.
Just your background. I mean, you have disparate backgrounds from coming from St. Louis. Your background is a little different than your opponents, and I was wondering how you seek to make that to seek that to your advantage?
Well, for me, it is hard for me to separate my personal background now from my professional background, because what I have done for 22 years is meet with people and talk to people that are in very difficult circumstances. And so it's not my personal experience, but it is in the sense that these are people that I talk to. These are people that I have relationships with that last for years. Court cases do not get resolved very quickly, typically. Certainly the most difficult ones don't. And so you speak to people over years. You are almost part of the family in the sense of what they're telling you and those intimate details. So it impacts me because I have represented someone who was facing a termination of his parental rights. I have been in the room when judges interview children that tell some horrible stories about the traumas that they have experienced. So because those things are real to me, because of how many times I've heard them and tried to counsel people through them, that absolutely impacts my perspective. It tells me that everybody is a person. They are unique and they have their own thoughts and beliefs, and they have to be listened to fully. The other question, I did practice a lot in rural counties in mid-Missouri. In fact, 12 counties total that I've practiced in mid-Missouri. And I don't know that, I don't know that I can distinguish just as far as saying that people are people. So I think I just don't see a distinction between the urban and rural. I'm not sure that I get it, sorry.
Ms. Jackson Williams.
So for me, I lived in Ferguson until I was 16 years old. And so I do know that when we did have Ferguson in 2014, it hit home for me in a lot of different ways. And I did become more vocal in the law school about just various disparities in our community. And I grew up, again, with a single parent. We experienced food insecurities. We experienced not having electricity. We experienced a lot of different things that made me acknowledge and understand how various programming in the community could make a huge difference in a youth's life. So with this seat particularly affecting the juvenile courts, I think that I would have a great understanding of what parents are going through when they're just not understanding how their kids are finding themselves in certain situations, but also identifying with the youth and talking them through like, hey, while this is your current circumstances and your current situation, there is something greater that could be there. Also, as a prior public defender like Ms. Peterson, I have stood beside people in the worst days of their lives. I, in 2020, stood beside a 19-year-old who was sentenced to 28 years in prison for a crime where nobody was killed nor seriously injured. I held a crying mother as she had to stand there for her son to be sentenced to this term of years. And I believe that my experience from my background experience, especially dealing with a stepmother who had to bury her son, my little brother, has allowed me to just view the world differently and see life a little differently. And again, be able to understand who people are and how they interact or understand things. As far as the rural versus urban piece, I did go to school in Kirksville and I was a justice systems major and not a criminal justice major. So we studied the justice system as a whole. And I will say, based on where you live, the judges' views are different because they're typically from those areas, and how they make rulings are a little different. And also your resources, your background, your history. And so you don't see the world the same way, and it does affect our justice system. And if you come back to that question later on, when we get more time to wrap up, I will finish it.
I don't see, well, Herb and Sue Tillema, I say old reliable.
Well, I hope that's what people say of me. And when I have passed from the scene, old and reliable, which leads me to my second question, which is less impertinent than the first, which is, you both have attractive experience and background, and I thank you both for offering yourself for this position. But I would like to know what each of you thinks along in this vein. When, after a, we hope, a lengthy term upon the court, you choose to retire, what do you hope that people will say of you that you have passed this way as a circuit judge?
Okay, Ms. Jackson Williams.
I truly 100%, 1000% hope that people say that I cared, that I listened, that I didn't make snap judgments, that I took all factors into consideration, and that I treated every person who came before me as a human, not because they had $100,000 or $5 to their name. Like, my true hope is that people understand that I genuinely do care. One of the things that I tell people all the time, and this is not even like, not politically, not in the workforce, like just everyday life, my goal is to be a good human. If people can walk away saying that I treated them like they were human, like they were a person, and that I did so while following the law and following precedent that has been set, I will walk away knowing that I did the job that had to be done. But my true goal is to just be a good human in everyday life and be a good human while following the law that's set before me.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. Well, what I tell my clients whenever we get a judge, one of the things that I will tell them is, yes, I've probably gotten a bad decision from this judge before. Yes, I've probably got a good decision from this judge before. But what I like for them to know is this a judge who will listen, regardless of whether or not we're going to like the outcome? So it is important to me that people know that I am listening to them, that I am knowing the law, and that I am following the law, and that they have had a full and fair opportunity to be heard, regardless of what they look like, right? I still know attorneys today who will counsel clients to hide their tattoos or take out their piercings, all of these kinds of things. And my hope is always that judges don't make decisions based on those things. And so my goal would be for people to know that however they come to me, they're going to be listened to. Like I said before, people are people. And so I think you listen to them and you take them for what they say, and then you analyze and make a decision based on the law.
Thank you. I did have one question that anybody can answer is there a Republican running for this office?
No.
So we're talking to one of you is going to be elected and going to be the judge.
Correct.
Well, yay. All right, now. All right, then I see Shamin has a question.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if I missed this in opening statements or not, but here in Boone County, you're in a primary and you guys are running. What kinds of law firms and legal groups are endorsing you or have endorsed you? That's just my kind of my question. Like what kind of endorsements have you each received?
Okay, Ms. Peterson, you start.
I have a lot of support from the family law bar, and that is support that I have not gone out to try to recruit. I have support from Gary Stamper. I have support from Helen Wade. I have support from Professor Mary Beck, who ran the law school's family violence clinic for years. I have support from Vicki Reback Wilson. I have, let me see who else. I'm trying to think. I know people who I've talked to behind the scenes, but if I don't have direct authorization to use their names, I will not. I have support that I know of for sure from Amy Saladay, a family law attorney. I have support from Christina McCartney. I have support from Casey Burnt, Amy Markle. They do a lot of juvenile work. Wow, this is a list that I was not prepared to give today. Who else? I will have to come back to it if I think of anyone else that I am missing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Jackson Williams.
So, like Ms. Peterson, it is really hard to think of all of the people on the spot, but I have the support and in his words, Gary Oxenhandler is my tool to be used as I see fit. So I've been endorsed by him, Bob Bailey. I've also been endorsed by Dean David or S. David Mitchell from the University of Missouri School of Law, as well as Rigel Oliveri, as the list goes on. The public defender's office is not, of course, allowed to endorse any singular candidate, but their district defender, as well as deputy district defender and prior district defender, are all in my corner and supporting me. I've also have the support of, oh my gosh, I can never say Catherine's last name right. Is it Sasser? And her partner, Kelly Simon. I also have the support, of course, of a number of people in the civil law community, as well as the probate community, such as Brent Hayden and Kate Bush. Like the list truly does go on. I have support from individuals from criminal law to civil law to family law, and not just one particular area. And I believe that that is due to my knowledge in all of those areas and my ability to effectively represent an individual in any of those areas. And like Ms. Peterson, I cannot think of everyone at this moment, and I tried to throw out. Reverend James Gray, of course, is one of my biggest and who has been helping me. Big Mama's Cafe is also another one that's endorsing and representing me, as well as another locally owned place, Lean Kitchen. So just a few places.
Okay, thank you. Alice, your hand is up.
I'm not sure if my question is appropriate, sorry, but do you see the Supreme Court decision on Roe versus Wade, any of it filtering down to your court, given that Missouri has passed many restrictive laws about choice?
Okay, Ms. Jackson Williams.
That is not a question that we can answer. I will say that regardless of whatever the Supreme Court does, the Supreme Court is the law of the land. So that would most certainly trickle down to the other courts as far as precedent. But we also have the Missouri Constitution, which could grant individual rights to people. So whatever our state and our Senate decides as far as what the law is what the courts will have to follow. And whatever the Supreme Court decides is what the courts will have to use as their precedent.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with that. The Supreme Court is the law of the land, and a judge is charged with following whatever the law is. And so whatever decision I would make would be based on the facts that are presented to me and the law as it exists at the time.
Okay, thank you. One thing came to mind is that if you have no opposition from the Republicans, you will be, I think, the first African-American judge in our circuit, will you not? How do you think that might affect, or do you think you can add anything because of that? Ms. Peterson.
I think differences matter. I think that people are more comfortable when they see people that look like them, or when they see something that doesn't look like maybe what they expected. I understand the value that my experiences as a Black person in my skin bring to the court. When I graduated from law school, back then it was still a pretty big class. It was 150 of us, I think, that graduated or around there. And there were, I believe, 3 Black people that graduated. There was me, a friend of mine, and well, another friend of mine, right? So there were 3 of us that graduated. And I know my experiences in the Master of Accountancy program. When I was there, I was the only Black person. And so I certainly have been in spaces where I am the only one. I know what that feels like. For years of my practice, there were very few times that I would see other Black people. Even though I practiced in front of over 50 judges, I've been in front of a Black one time, and that was the Honorable Lisa White Hardwick at the Western District Court of Appeals. So I acknowledge that it is monumental. It is a big deal, and I am excited to be that person.
Thank you. Right, Ms. Jackson Williams.
I echo a lot of what Ms. Peterson said. I too have often been the only person who looks like me in a lot of the spaces that I'm in. My law school class was slightly smaller with 120 students, or 127. And out of the 127, 5 of us were Black and 4 of us graduated. So of course we were all friends because, you tend to gravitate towards individuals who you can identify with, especially in hard times. And we often call it trauma bonding because law school can be a traumatic experience and you bond with individuals over trauma. And even as a public defender, there was only 2 Black public defenders, and we often saw David Tyson Smith or Robin Wynn in the courtroom, but that wasn't always. And so we're often the only Black attorneys in the courtroom. Going to Truman State University, no different. Out of 7,000 students, there was 156 Black students when I was there. And so I was often always the only Black student in my class, and I was always able to offer a different perspective than those of my colleagues. And I think that it would be the same on the bench. I think one of the things that I do offer as well is a part of being Black is that I'm in this weird generational gap. I'm not quite a millennial. I'm not quite Gen X. I'm not Gen Z, but I'm like in this weird gap because I was born in the 80s, but like grew up in the 90s, right? And so I grew up without a lot of technology in the beginning, but was also in the first piece of the technology age. And so I am able to identify with so many different generations, so many different cultures, so many different backgrounds, from my own personal background, from going to a rural university to being at Mizzou and living in Columbia for almost 10 years. I think being a Black woman on the bench would allow me to just identify with people in ways that some of the judges on the bench have not been able to. And I believe that I would do a phenomenal job at it while following the law and giving people what they deserve.
Okay, thank you. And according to the clock on my computer, there's not much time left. We're going to have to just give you time to do some tying up of your loose ends. And then I'll turn it back over to Carl after that. He can ask his question then. And we'll start with Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. So thank you all for your time and for your questions. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your attention. I will follow up by saying I too spoke with the judges before deciding to do this. This is not something that I did lightly. I spoke with them. I am confident that I have the experience to take on this job, whatever the docket looks like. I have experience that one of the things, even though my primary experience is family law intersects with every single area of the law. If I have a client or the other side that is involved in a criminal case, I have to know what's going on in that criminal case. If there are depositions, I need to be a part of those at times. I need to communicate with the attorneys on those other cases. I have also handled civil cases, landlord-tenant cases, probate cases, juvenile cases. So I have handled a number of different kinds of cases. I am prepared to spend the rest of my career on the bench. I would plan to retire from there. I think that that would be long enough. I am not as close to 70 as perhaps Ms. Jackson Williams made it clear. So I do have a lot of years that I could put in on the bench, and the experience that I bring matters a lot. A judicial slot is not a legislative slot. It's not a place where a lot of change from the bench happens. I will also say my children keep me young. My oldest daughter is a teacher at West Middle School. She is here in Columbia. My youngest daughter is an active duty soldier. She is currently stationed at Fort Bragg. I have an 11-year-old son. And so certainly, and also I have supervised a lot of young attorneys. So I am uniquely qualified to be the next Division 10 judge. I forgot to mention Betty Wilson, who was a longtime community member here. She endorses me. She is enjoying retirement on the West Coast, but I do have her support as well. So I hope that I will have the chance to serve this community as the next Associate Circuit Judge for Division 10. Thanks for your time again.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Jackson Williams.
Wait, before you start the time, Angela, I was not saying that you were close to 70. That was not what I was saying at all. That is not what I was saying at all. Okay, I'm so sorry. We can start the time. So thank you guys for having us here today. It was truly an honor to speak to you all. Again, I know that I've had the opportunity to meet with a number of you in various ways. I've been to a few Muleskinners meetings at this point, but I really do enjoy the opportunity to just speak to people and for people to get to know who I am. I do want to touch on something that you asked earlier that I did not quite wrap up, that I said I would, but living in Kirksville, as far as the question as with regard to rural versus urban and how that kind of affects things, I do know that we see different drug problems based on different areas, and their access to treatment courts would be slightly different, or their ability to know what their options are in community programming would be slightly different. And so one of the things that I truly would wish to happen is just more access, more knowledge, more pamphlets available in, I know that they can't necessarily be in the courtroom, but hey, if you take a step downstairs to the first floor, there's some information that could be, available to you for various programming. And that is just based on my experience as far as a justice systems major while at Truman State. And again, that encompassed the entire system and not just criminal law, which I was truly grateful for as far as my experience at Truman. With regards to me and like why I'm doing this and why I believe I am the best candidate, I truly just believe that, again, people don't care what you know until they know you care. People aren't going to open up to you, be honest, be forthcoming, and really want the court to know those deep, dark, gritty secrets until they know that it won't be used against them. Ms. Peterson made a comment earlier that she knows that some attorneys still tell people to cover up their tattoos, to cover up certain piercings because it could be perceived a certain way. And I will be the first to admit, if you've met me outside of this, I have so many tattoos. And I was initially concerned, even being a young Black attorney, whether or not that was going to affect me. And I know that it hasn't, because that does not take an effect on like my knowledge, my ability to serve or how I perceive people. And it hasn't affected how people perceive me. And I would want to do that same thing going forward. Also, I had the opportunity to meet with our Missouri Supreme Court Judge, Robin Ransom, on multiple occasions. And one of the things that she said at a banquet that I was actually the honoree at was one of the things she does is wear tennis shoes and leggings underneath her robe every single day. And I thought that was so funny to hear. I was like, oh my gosh, I love tennis shoes and leggings. Can I do that? But when she gave her explanation, it was because she was with the juvenile courts and she would wear bright tennis shoes. She would wear fun socks. She would wear fun leggings because she found that it was a way to connect to those people who were in her courtroom at the time. The kids felt more comfortable if they knew that she had on the coolest new Dunks that came out, or the latest Jordans, or the Yeezys, whatever it was. And so hearing her say that made me know and realize that you could be 100% yourself. You could be so comfortable being you. And because you are who you are, people are going to naturally gravitate towards you because they know that you're being authentic and living your truth. And if I were elected to be judge, I would be totally authentic as I am here with you all today. I would live in my truth. I would apply the law as it is supposed to be applied. I would know the law as I need to know it. And I would also have the ability to connect and relate and really give back in ways that I think is extremely important. Earlier, I mentioned that I'm an adjunct professor at the law school. And one of the things I teach is client interviewing and counseling. And so when people ask me, what is that? I tell people, I teach kids how to talk to people, because I think one of the most important things that we can do is know how to connect, relate, and know another individual and truly get to what it is the issue is and how it can affect our everyday lives. And if I were elected as our judge, I would continue to take my teachings in my classroom into my courtroom and really connect with everyone as much as I can. And I really, really appreciate you all for taking the time out here today and listen to me. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Also, I am having a meet and greet at the Heidelberg on Tuesday, the 21st at 5:30 p.m. We're going to have appetizers. We're going to have soda, juice, drinks, if that is your choice. But also, who doesn't love Marty's wings, right? So if you all want to take the time out to get to know me just a little bit more, I would encourage you all to come to the Heidelberg this upcoming Tuesday at 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, and somebody even put on chat that you are not allowed to troll for money. So if anybody wants to donate to either one of these, surprising, I didn't know squat about either one of you, but I'm impressed by both of you. Anybody wants to donate to either one of them, I imagine there's, well, you go to meet and greets or chats, or if they have a website.
Their
donate to it.
websites are on the announcements.
Okay, yeah, go to their websites if you want. All right, now I'll turn it over to Carl.
All right. Well, thank you. As co-president, I want to thank you both for being here. It's a very difficult decision. I just have one final question. Maybe you could take a minute each to answer if you wish. It's a simple question, but it's also very complicated, and that is the soup du jour these days in the city has to do with equity. What is equity? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you in terms of being on the bench? What is equity?
For me, equity, that's such an interesting question, especially because with critical race theory being at the forefront of everything right now, I feel like there is a lot of overlap, but a lot of confusion between critical race theory versus equity and inclusion. And for me, equity is everyone having an even playing field. And one of the things that always comes to mind is a meme that went viral probably 15 years ago, and it was the boxes, where one kid had no box, one had one box, and one had two boxes. And it wasn't that everybody should get one box. Well, if you're shorter, like my daughter, maybe you need 3 boxes. If you are Angela's son, maybe you only need 2 boxes because you're 11. And me, I would need no box because I'm tall enough. And it's really putting everybody at an even playing field, being able to have equal opportunities across the board. So if it's in the criminal justice side, it's equal sentencing for the same crimes. If it's on the family law side, it's truly looking at financial history, truly looking at your family situation and what's in the best interest of the child, and looking at the total picture equally, not looking at the finances solely when making decisions. It's truly giving everybody the even playing field, giving people a step up when they need a step up, or giving people a handout when they need a handout, but not giving a handout just because B got a handout, which pushes B, just further along. It's really giving everybody an even playing field and making sure that whoever came before you in the justice system is treated the same, no matter what their background looks like, no matter who they are. And my last piece is when Dean Mitchell did the critical race theory speech at the Boone County Bar Association luncheon last week, one of the things he said as far as critical race theory and equity and inclusion are concerned is we have to stop thinking that everybody's individual accomplishments means that a certain race or a certain group has made it. And I really think that that's important, and not looking at legacy as a reason to treat someone different, but really putting us all on the same field.
And Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. I agree with that. Equity is fairness. What is fair? A lot of times in divorces in particular, when people are dividing marital property, they'll think 50-50, right? But that's equal, which is not the same as equitable, right? And the standard is equity. So equity to me, just simply put, is fairness. I went to a seminar recently, and one of the phrases that they used was JEDI B, and they describe it as justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, because that's another part, right? So there's a whole group of things I think that we have to consider, and it really is important to me. I mean, like I said, for years, I've been explaining to people this difference between equality and equity, and it's a real distinction that we have to pay attention to. And my goal would be for everyone to be treated fairly based on the circumstances.
Okay.
Well, thank you both for being here. We've come to the end of another Muleskinners invigorating discussion, and the candidates are wonderful, and I appreciate both of you. It's going to be a difficult decision, but as co-president of the Muleskinners, thank you for being here. Thank you for entertaining our questions, and we look forward to the ongoing races. I'm sure you do as well. So.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.